Hi, this is Shadi, and today we're going to be discussing ideas by Kano Shihan himself of how to train an effective way for self-defense from a very early age. This is something that if you just take a look at and read, you would know that it is not there anymore. It's never been there maybe, but surely today it is not there. So I've touched upon kata before, and I've read a large passage from the book Mind Over Muscle, particularly the last chapter concerning kata training, and he talks about defending ukemi, reacting properly, learn to strike properly. So I'm under the belief that kata is not just, the ceremonial presentations that you see. So please, before you hear the word kata and completely shut off and head to the comments and say, it's useless, it doesn't work, please keep an open mind and try to understand the point of view of this man, because he wrote this in a very different time. Training intensity, everything was just completely different. So kata, I would say, is every form of drilling, not just the sparring. So when you are doing nagekomi, that's kata. When you are doing uchikomi, that's kata. If someone is basically trying to hit you with a sword or a club or a punch, and you're doing an exercise of evading it, working on your senses, working on your reflex when they grab you from behind, etc., that is all still kata. It is still considered as pressure testing and as resistance training, but it is still a form of kata. So again, before you hear the word kata and you just completely shut off and go to the comments, please just listen to what I have to say, and also please get a copy of Mind Over Muscle, and I urge you to read this book because it is a wonderful book. So today he talks about how you actually train with weapons effectively, with full intensity, and to actually learn how to defend them. So today we will go to the chapter of 3 levels of judo, which can be found in the page 94 in the book Mind Over Muscle. So you have 3 levels. The first one being the lower level, which is all about training, technique, fending off attacks, etc. The next one, which is the middle level, it's still about largely of physical training, but to use it wisely and correctly, like controlling your emotions, observing others, and having always an open mind to learn. And then the final one, which is, encompassing everything. It's about obviously contributing to society, so on and so forth. This is just a brief of what the 3 levels are. So today we will just stick to the lower level because it has a lot to unpack. So here, he says, however, recently I have come to believe that in judo training for small children, inflatable swords made of rubber or cloth rather than bamboo swords should be used right from the start to teach kata, in which to learn to strike or thrust at each other and to fend off these blows. That is to say, I would like to incorporate some of the kata that were formerly taught in kendo into judo training in some form. So right there, you can see that from the very early beginning for children, he wants to use inflatable swords, rubber swords. If today you see people training with rubber knives and plastic guns and foam clubs, you would know that they want to train with full intensity, but at the same time keep it very much safe. So if you are just doing kata and ceremonial and shouting kiai, you wouldn't need a rubber inflatable sword, like he's saying, from a very early age. He wants children to go full force because we know how reckless children can be, and yet keep it safe. So here you see that the definition of kata is pretty much different of what we have today. Today we see kata and we think of the exams, and we think of the static exhibitions that we need to do in order to get a belt. And at the same time, he shows his admiration for kendo. So moving on, he says, in the future, I believe judo will incorporate some of the kata from the current kendo into ordinary training. But I believe the current kendo as it stands now is less than satisfactory. Swords are no longer considered as useful as they once were compared to what is learned in judo. There are no situations in which having a sword is an advantage except when you draw the sword and take up a defensive posture. So you can see that he was very much a progressive, and you can see it with the Kodokan's inventions of kata or adding kata. For example, in the old days, the self-defense kata was actually kime no kata, which was around the year 1888, 1890, this period. Later in the 50s, after Kano's death, they actually changed it to like the main one being Goshinjutsu no kata. You see also the choice of weapons change because the times changed. In Kime no kata, you had the sword and the knife, while in Goshinjutsu, you had the gun, you had the club, and you had the knife. They can still be very much used till this day. So, he says also, like in the first paragraph that I read, he says that the like formally taught in kendo, like the kata that are formally taught. So, I think we can all agree that when talking about kendo, a lot of the stuff have been taken away, stripped away, including striking the legs, etc. So, and also, of course, self-defense. A lot of these martial arts, judo included, we are all going to the sports aspect. We want to compete. We think of the Olympics. But the self-defense teachings, as Kano here is proposing, are pretty much not there. So it's kind of like he's saying, cross-train kendo and judo, or incorporating the kendo, I would say, teachings into judo, but evolving them and making them more progressive into today's situations with today's weapons. That's how much of a progressive he was. So to keep judo into kata forms, demonstrations, is actually, in my opinion, halting judo, and also not going by his ideas of inflatable swords, etc., is also halting judo. This is what he actually wanted. He was very much a progressive. He wanted this art to continue to grow and evolve, and unfortunately, we have not done so. So let me continue just a little bit. He says, I believe the current judo and kendo should be integrated. So again, cross-training both can be a great idea to learn distance management, to learn how to manage a sword, strike sensitive areas if someone is carrying a weapon, like particularly the wrist. Of course, there may also be considerable opposition to this idea, so it may be difficult to do this right away. So he knew it was a challenge. However, the general trend is certainly heading in that direction. But as time passes, there will inevitably be a distinction made between those who attach importance to swords and those who play down their importance. So you see, he knew that it wasn't an easy idea. Like you see here, swords are still being used in the Mifune demonstration, but nonetheless, this is not what is happening. We clearly see that judo has become more of a sport. That doesn't mean that it's ineffective, but it is not optimal the way that he actually wanted it. He actually wanted judo to be more of a discipline to fend off attacks and also make society a better place. Now, speaking of the Olympics, there's a letter that he sent personally to Gunji Koizumi. You can find it on IJF.org, where he talks about neutral in a sense. So he's not saying yes and he's not saying no to the idea of judo being in the Olympics, but also he's afraid that it's gonna go the sports route, which happened. And also, he's afraid that too much nationalism and politics will get into a practice that's made for a better society. And again, he's very much on the spot on this one. So, when you see Kano being in the IOC, you see the Olympic flag on his tomb, you can like immediately or spontaneously come to the conclusion that he wanted judo to be in the Olympics, but that's not the case. Here you can see that he wanted judo to be much more. So to schools like Valente Brothers, Gracie Baja, Helson Gracie, all these that are still, for example, putting MMA gloves and trying to strike someone in their closed guard, having surprise attacks from multiple people, like not multiple at the same time, but for example, someone jumping you and then you deal with it, and then immediately another one jumps for stress management technique, etc. I really appreciate those teachings that are still being very much done, but on the side, a lot of these Gracie schools, like Gracie Baja, I believe that if you have to past belts. It's not just sweeps and guards and submissions, but also there's a lot of self-defense teachings in every level. So it's really a shame that he put out these ideas in this book and no one is even paying attention to them or even trying to incorporate them. And if they do, it's 2 times out of the year, or like a small seminar that you do for a month or a week so you can get a small diploma. It's really absolutely absurd. So if you have anything else to add, please let me know down below. Also, consider my Patreon. I post there once a week for the patrons. Your support will be greatly appreciated. And of course, don't forget to check out Josh Simon's shop in the description below. This was Shadi, and thank you for listening.